brain breaking how dumb what he said was, but he had no idea that what he just said was idiotic because he was taught the same thing. That was the first lie and so the reason I call it a lie and not a medical myth or something is because it's my job as a doctor to know what I'm talking about. And it was my chief resident's job. He should have, when he said that, he should have went, that don't make no sense, does it? I need to research that. That don't sound right. But he didn't do that. And that's a doctor's job, is to constantly question every word that comes out of your mouth, but also out of the mouth of every other doctor you're around. And if we hear something that makes our spidey sense tingle, we should go, I got to look into that. That doesn't make any sense. But doctors are human. And we get complacent and we get lazy. And once we've said something 1,000 times, it's habit. And we don't even think about the truth of it any longer. And that's inappropriate. And I think it's almost unforgivable. And that's why I've dedicated this second half of my career to try and undo all the damage that I did in the first few years of my medical practice, when I would recommend to a diabetic, when I would give them the American Diabetes Association dietary guidelines handout and say, here, you need to eat this way, I harmed that patient. When I had somebody with hypertension and I didn't talk to them at all about lowering their carb intake, I would hand them the American Heart Association DASH diet. I harmed that person, right? And so I'm trying to undo the damage I did early in my career when I was an ignorant, idiot doctor I was parroting what I was taught. And when you're practicing something as important as medicine, you don't get the luxury of just being a parrot and repeating what you've been taught. You don't get that luxury. You have a fiduciary relationship to your patients. There are ramifications if you give them bad advice or if you harm them in some way. And I think that's as it should be. It should be set up just like that. But doctors really have become complacent because, as you know, in reality, if you practice standard of care and you practice by the guidelines, it's impossible to successfully come at you for harming a patient, because you were practicing according to community guidelines and standards of care. You're blameless in the eyes of the medical board and the state, the state powers that be.
Right.
Absolutely not how it should be. Nobody practicing as a professional gets a pass. You don't get a pass and say, oh, well, that's what the American Academy of whatchamacallit said. Therefore, who am I? I'm just a doctor. The whole point of being called as a physician and being trained as a physician and then being trusted as a physician means that your brain should be working 24/7. And many doctors, their brain's on idle.